Kia ora, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in part of the world. Welcome to Weekender on Sunday. I'm your host, Sunil Kaushal, on 20th of March in Auckland. It's 2 minutes past 5. Great to have you. Thank you for allowing us to come into your homes, onto your screens, and for your time. What a week it has been, not only globally, but also locally in New Zealand. We have seen the government take drastic action around petrol prices. Petrol companies have dropped the prices just as an interim, as the Finance Minister Grant Robertson said till May. In other headlines, we are also seeing that the MIQ spots and self-isolations have been taken away for those non-vaccinated people returning home to New Zealand. That's a great move, maybe a little bit late, but at least they can come. And in other news, people from New Zealand, especially the Indian diaspora, are now traveling to India. And to all those who are in India, enjoy the time, enjoy the season. It's quite refreshing to be back home. Some people have gone after 2.5 years. Must be very emotional. Send us your responses and your feelings, how you're feeling being back in India after a long time. Some people have gone to close some chapters in their lives with the passing away of their loved ones. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, and that you may have peace at this time. In other news, the war in Ukraine still goes on. The international countries and international community is gathering together. There doesn't seem to be any sort of stoppage at this moment. We just hope and pray that some sort of a resolution would come between Russia and Ukraine. In sports, we've got the World Cup cricket for women happening, and currently, as I see the score, the match between the English and the White Ferns is still going on. England's chasing 203 for victory, or 4 for victory, and they are currently at 143 for 4 in the 34th over. Yesterday was a match between India and Australian women, which seemed that it looked like the Indian women will win, but towards the end, Australia had their day. Coming back to our show today, as you very well know, that New Zealand, the local body politics is on. We're going into election in October, and there are a lot of people, a lot of inquiries, a lot of people asking, what is this about? Some people are interested, some are not, but we are trying to give you as much as information from the candidates, especially around the mayoralty. And today we are joined by Viv Beck, who is a mayoral hope for the Auckland Council, and she comes with a vast experience of business and being the CEO of Heart of the City, an entity that is interested in the businesses and refurbishment, etc., of Auckland Central. So welcome to the show, Viv. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to talking to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
You're welcome. Viv, many people probably wouldn't know who you are. So who is Viv Beck?
Well, I've had quite a diverse career. As you said, I've been in the public, private and not-for-profit sector. I've worked in small business. I've been chief executive of two medium-sized businesses. And I've also worked at reporting to chief executive level at both a state-owned enterprise and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. So I've had quite a diverse career. It certainly helped me in the role I'm in now, and I believe it would if I was successful in being elected as mayor. But I think the other thing is that I'm a very strong people person. I very much like to listen to different needs before making decisions, and I like to work very collaboratively. But ultimately, decisions have to be made, and things need to be achieved. So I'm very focused, but also very collaborative.
Sure. Viv, you are currently the chief executive of Heart of the City. So what's the role of Heart of the City?
Well, we're the business association for the city centre of Auckland. So we're there to represent the needs of businesses, and we recognise to be successful for business, we also need to care about other people in the community. So it's a great place to come and live, work, visit, and study. So that's been our brief. And obviously over the last 2 years, it's been a very different experience. Previously, we spent a lot of time on marketing and events. We still do, but it's been a very different environment. But we also advocate on issues that we believe are really important for business. We've got more of a place-based focus than someone, say, like the Auckland Business Chamber or the EMA, although we do work very closely with a lot of other organisations. But we at the moment, for example, we're very hopeful with the border reopening that we're going into a different phase now. So we're gearing up with a whole lot of events and promotions to bring people back into the city centre. But we've touched a whole range of things, including some of the social issues that have really been exacerbated through COVID.
Viv, so you're basically a business organization, business chamber, so as to speak, association for Auckland Central. Now, I mean, we have seen, especially during COVID, a lot of businesses, go bust, belly up. Very well-known eateries, very well long-standing establishments out there. COVID hasn't been gracious to anyone, let alone to businesses. But so, I mean, two things. What are you hearing? And secondly, what as a CEO have you done to help those businesses?
Well, it's been devastating for businesses across Auckland, and the city centre has been at the epicentre. So we are very attuned to those needs, and we've been lobbying very hard, in fact, for the entire 2 years for support for business. We've worked with other business associations and sector heads around how do we get the best support we can for businesses. It's been pretty challenging at times, but we've lobbied really hard because it has had an enormous impact on businesses, and that's been a grave concern to us.
So, Viv, what was the number of businesses in that area prior to COVID and now?
Well, actually, we're just doing that calculation at the moment. It varies a bit because you get some new ones coming in. So we're actually just at the moment calculating. But it's the number of people that have been, the number of businesses that have been directly hit, of course, are the same ones over and over again. And that's just less than 1,300 in the really badly hit sectors. And we're just doing that calculation at the moment of how many have closed. There is sometimes a bit of a lag too, because sometimes people wait for their leases to be up and things, but it's had a devastating effect. I mean, we're well over $1 billion in terms of the lost spending for those same sectors. The same people have been hit over and over again, and we've lobbied very hard to get them financial support and other policy changes that can enable business to trade through a time like this. So we've been very active and we've worked very collaboratively. And in fact, in October, I was extremely concerned that we were getting these Monday announcements with nothing for Auckland other than we were doing it tough. So I actually invited a dozen other organisations to come together, and we put one report up to government, really trying to get more support for Auckland businesses. So we have worked very hard.
Did you get anything from the government?
We did. We put one report together on behalf of about a dozen different organisations, and we certainly got some things. I mean, the two things we haven't got, which I think have really played out in these months at the moment, because this is actually the toughest time for many people right now. And the two things that we wanted to get was targeted support for people who were really badly hit, because we've had 2 years now, and it's just, how long can you last? And it's just been devastating. So we did want to get very targeted support that recognised different levels of financial disadvantage. And the other thing we wanted to get was access to low cost, easy to repay money, because some people, they've obviously got a lot of debt. We wanted it to be, not everybody, but most people now have debt. And we wanted them to have access to money that they didn't have the worry of paying back like a bank loan. And we haven't, we've got the Omicron payment. We went into lobby recently to get a second date for the eligibility, but we actually don't believe that the support is quite right for what some people need now, and that's disappointing.
What about from the council? Did you get any help from the council, the businesses?
Well, less in the first year, but in the second year we started to get a little bit more, some things like the support with outdoor dining. So we've got a city centre targeted rate, and that has been able to be applied for support for businesses to enable them to expand outdoors. And there is also one of the other things that has been, I know, helpful for some has been a program that enables people to have money to help get advice, for example, around moving to digital, moving their business digital. Obviously, for some businesses that hasn't been as helpful, but for some that's been very helpful. And actually, this time round, it also includes money for implementation. So some people, for example, have had money to develop a website or a strategy for marketing, but they didn't have the money to implement it. So this time round, there has been some money for implementation. I realise for some people that's less effective, but for some it's been very supportive.
So that's the one from Auckland Unlimited, right?
Yes, yeah.
So, but that has been for Auckland wide.
Yes,
but what about the suffering business, especially in Auckland CBD? Was there anything from the council?
Well, the outdoor dining one we lobbied for, along with others, to get, and I know a number of businesses have been very happy about that. We're getting support with some of the activations and things that particularly, I know some have had to be cancelled more recently, but we've had some support. I mean, I think council has been affected themselves, but we have had some support, and I think going forward there will be more. I think there's a recognition now of the severity of what's happened in the city centre. So I'm certainly hopeful that support will continue.
Sure. Many people would know that prior to COVID coming, and you would know as the CEO of Heart of the City, prior to COVID coming, there has been a lot of disruption in Auckland CBD. Some have been driven, mostly been driven by the government to say we'll get a city rail link, etc., and make it more, like Melbourne and all. And due to that, it's been delayed, it's been costing a lot, and it has also put so much pressure on businesses that so many businesses are closing and there's no foot traffic. What's your thought on that? If you were the mayor, how would you approach it?
Well, if I had been mayor over the last few years, I would have taken a very different approach, because I think the impact on businesses has been so severe that it shouldn't have been such a hard job to lobby for financial support for these businesses. We took it to Parliament in late 2019, presented to the Economic Development Select Committee, and cross-party was supportive of more support for the businesses affected by City Rail Link. And we also asked for policy work to begin on so that the rest of the project would be appropriately managed, and in fact future large-scale long-term infrastructure would also be managed well. But I have to say it's been a very, very long, hard road for these businesses. In September, the government agreed to develop a hardship fund. They had some support offered a couple of years before, but that really didn't meet the needs of the businesses. The September one, they put 12 million aside for 2 years. We have been supporting the businesses because there are still a number of concerns about the criteria for that fund. And the reality is it will only be in a position of supporting people with their rent. It doesn't come anywhere near covering the trauma and stress and impact on their families. It has been devastating and life-changing, and if I had been mayor, I would have acted much more strongly for that. We've done everything we can as the business association, and as the government tells us, this is an unprecedented decision, but it's very, very unfortunate that it's taken such a long, hard battle.
Is there any light at the end of the tunnel, figuratively speaking, for this?
Well, there is money aside now, and I think we're going to continue actually to try and get a fair deal for people, because it isn't fair at the moment. There are some criteria that are really concerning them. They have placed applications in for the funding so that there will be some money coming, but the City Rail Link Limited has confirmed that there will be reimbursement if there is further change in the criteria, and we will keep working, and we're working with a number of MPs and others to really continue that cause, because actually these people deserve this.
Sure. So let's say come 8th of October, you're elected the mayor. What would you do to change things for City Rail Link and for the businesses in Auckland Central?
Well, in terms of City Rail Link, I think people have to have a fair financial support, and that's I think with any large-scale project going forward, we have to make sure people are looked after, and that planning happens early in the project. The other things that I've been extremely concerned about, I mean, we're coming out of COVID, we need to support businesses for recovery. And we also need to do the other, there's a couple of big things that really I'd be focusing on. One is transport continues to be a big issue for Aucklanders actually, but access in and out of the city centre has become challenged. So transport is a priority. I think projects generally need to be managed really well, and they need to consider the needs of impacted people up front. And I've had experience of this in the city centre where projects have really hurt businesses. And I'm hearing from people across the city where there are projects that have not been managed well. So that's certainly a priority. I think also there's a view that council, and I have to say I've experienced it myself in my role now, is that there's a lot of inefficiency. And so we really need to ensure that council is operating optimally, because we have a fantastic city. And I think the unfortunate thing is that some of these things are kind of the buts. And we actually have to deal with the issues. We have to deal with the transport. We have to deal with crime, because we can't have a city that people feel unsafe. And we do have to ensure that people's rates are being invested as if it was council's own money.
Okay,
So
I'll come on those things later on. Just going on to next thing, since you are, giving basically your, what you would do is, you are quoted around transportation that you'll seize the fuel tax that Aucklanders are paying. Well, I think to many Aucklanders, that'll be a great news. But then how would you subsidize it, or how would you counter that? Obviously, by the looks of it, if there's so much money in the kitty that hasn't been used, it's not successful, right? So how would you...
Sorry.
Yeah, so how would you plan that, or what's the alternative for that?
The money in the kitty actually is earmarked for projects, but the thing about the fuel tax is that it was only ever intended as an interim tax. And really a number of people were concerned about it from the outset, because it is actually unfair. It's hitting everybody at the pump, regardless of what level of service they're actually getting. So in my mind, it was always intended, and in fact it is an interim tax. What I think we need to do to get that money is we need to take the fat out of the transport program at the moment. People can see that there is fat. I think we need to clearly prioritise projects across the city and ensure that they're affordable. So we need a really clear plan that meets the needs of Aucklanders now and going forward, that people understand and can buy into. And we also need to have a different deal, if you like, with Wellington, because there are real problems at the moment. I mean, there are obviously interdependencies with that funding in terms of funding we get from Wellington. But the reality is that we need a much more strategic approach, I believe, to how we plan our transport and infrastructure and how we finance it. So there's a lot to do in that space. And I think it is achievable. But the reason I've said within 12 months, because obviously it would be good to get rid of it sooner, but we do actually have to make sure we do the work to find where the money comes from, because we do need to build a world-class transport system.
So the money that is coming from the Auckland fuel tax, is that going to the government or staying with Auckland Council currently?
It's being used on projects, but we get extra funding coming from Waka Kotahi based on the money that Auckland comes from the tax. So there's an interdependency with other money that comes.
Yeah, but then there is an argument that Auckland Transport is a rule to themselves. How would you manage that?
Oh, I think we need to have much firmer expectations with the CCOs. I mean, the review done in 2020 made it clear that there were things that Auckland Council, that Auckland Transport, and in fact other CCOs needed to address. And I think one of the roles that the mayor can play is ensure that those expectations are really clear, and the statements of intent are able to set the tone and framework for what those entities do. Because in the end, they should be answerable to the people of Auckland. Because I know they have their own boards, but the reality is they're funded by Aucklanders. And I think we have to have a much stronger focus on what Auckland needs, both now and going forward.
Yes, because obviously, from the feedback and the chitter chatter that you find on various other groups, Auckland Transport is not well liked, because as you know, and it's well supported by the council and the mayor, but there's a little bit of a ambiguity there because they've obviously got their own governing laws and whatnot. But I think as a mayor, people expect the mayor to look after it, and that might be a good challenge for you. What are there from a green, from the climate change? What's your policies on that for Auckland? As you know, the budget is out at the moment.
Yeah. So we are still developing detailed policy, and we'll be working on that over the coming months. But I do believe we have to be focused on reducing emissions, for example, and on the risk of climate change. I think a lot of the transport has a lot to play in those emissions, and I think it is important that we do build a great transport system. We also have to be mindful at the moment that a lot of people don't have access to, for example, public transport. What I'm hearing from people is that they are concerned about big increases in rates, and it does come to about 6% if you add the general rates increase and the targeted rate for the environment. But what people are concerned about is how well that money is spent. So that's what I'm hearing since I've announced that I'm standing. That is consistent feedback. So I think it's a bit like a business. You don't put your prices up until you're absolutely sure you've got the most efficient model to operate your business. And in this environment, any sort of price increase is difficult.
Yes. So would you be looking at, do you support the current budget that is there? The Auckland Council budget?
I think that it's going to be very challenging around that environment tax, not because people don't support the environment, but I think the reality is in this environment, I mean, obviously it's out for consultation, so it's important that people have a say, but certainly the feedback I'm getting is that, they're not convinced the rates money is being used as wisely as it could be, and that's really going to be the focus that I would bring to the Mayoralty.
Sure. You mentioned in your opening statement around the Auckland, Central Auckland, and you've also mentioned about safety issues. I know that people are a little bit afraid of going into the city. So as a CEO of Heart of the City, as well as a mayor hopeful, let's say, on 8th of October, if you are the mayor, how would you address those issues, especially homelessness in the city, because people don't want to go?
Yeah, actually, there was a very good program we were involved with Auckland City Mission and LifeWise, and actually council and successive governments have supported it. It's called Housing First, and we actually had a very well-managed program to house rough sleepers before COVID. But what has happened through COVID is people were put into emergency housing, which was good right at the beginning as a pandemic hit, and I saw people on the street just before, as we went into lockdown, and it was good that people had somewhere to go. But the problem is, it doesn't. We haven't got sustainable housing that has come out of that, where people have the right services around them. So there is definitely an issue in that area. We've been lobbying hard to get our fair share of police resources and presence on the street. We've been lobbying to get better management of emergency housing, addiction and mental health services. We've got a great program that we've developed, and it's managed by Auckland City Mission, that is a positive alternative to begging. I believe that we need to be firm on crime, and I think we need to be supportive of people who need help. So this is something that I would be dealing with quite firmly and strongly, and I have seen great results that can come when services are put in place that work. So it's an area that I take very seriously. I work with other colleagues around the city who are experiencing similar issues, but it's something that I would bring a lot of focus to, because I don't think it's acceptable that Aucklanders don't feel safe, whether they're in the city centre or in their homes and dairies across the city. It's not acceptable.
Would you increase the rates for the ratepayers?
The rate for what, sorry?
Would you increase the rates, property rates, if you are the mayor?
Well, I think it's very important that we get council operating as leanly and efficiently as possible before we think about rates increases.
So that means you will not increase the rates?
No, I'm not making a comment like that at this point. I've got a lot more work to do in the coming months. My philosophy, though, and what I'm hearing from Aucklanders so far, is some people, I mean, it's not so much that people understand that rates are needed, and there are times where they'll increase, and sometimes they might be for a specific purpose, which generally people are okay with if it's really clear what that purpose is and how it will be measured. I think that what I see and what I'm hearing is that we need to get cost out of council before we think about more rates increases.
Sure. Do you think we have a world-class transportation in Auckland?
No, because it's the number one issue that I'm hearing from people, and I think it needs to be really fit for purpose. There are some things that work really well. So, for example, the Northern Busway, I don't think I hear complaints about it, and I know people who've actually ditched their cars to get on that bus, and that's fantastic. And I'm very supportive of public transport, and I think the most important thing is that people have access to it, and it takes them where they need to go when they need to get there. And I'm very, very supportive of that. We do have to get emissions down. We're growing, and we have to have an increased use of public transport, but we've got to get it. And I think part of the problem at the moment is we've got a number of big projects that sort of go round in circles and don't get delivered. We've got, I think, a whole lot of projects that people are questioning, and we've really got to bring some real focus into what we are doing, why we're doing it, when we're going to do it in terms of phasing the projects. And we should be aiming to have a world-class transport system, yes.
Sure. Viv, thank you so much for your time. But just before we go, what are your top 3 priorities, and why should someone vote for you?
Top 3 priorities: transport and congestion, crime and safety, and making sure council is as efficient as possible and doing what it needs to do to help support a great city. And why would they vote for me? Because I'm a people person. I care a lot. I like to listen before making decisions. And I've got a diverse background across public, private, not-for-profit sector. And I'm determined that we're going to get the super into the super city.
Sure. Thank you so much, Viv Beck, Mayoral hopeful for Auckland Council, and also the Chief Executive of Heart of the City. Thank you so much for your time, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Viv Beck from the Heart of the City, the CEO, who is running for the mayoralty of Auckland. As you heard from her, she's got top 3 priorities in transportation, in safety, and making Auckland a world-class city, and why you should vote for her. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great having you join us, and thank you very much for your questions. Sorry, we're running out of time and can't answer or ask all those questions, but we'll certainly have Viv back closer in June or July and closer to the elections. This is your host, Sunil Kaushal, saying goodbye, and thank you once again for joining us. Good evening.